In January, I uploaded a video that I had drafted back in November last year to my other YouTube channel, The Last Days of the West. In it, I outlined what I believed were the real reasons for the war in Gaza and where I thought it would be heading. You can find a link to the video in the description box below. Now, almost 10 months later, and with all the events that have occurred since then, and especially in recent days, I'm more certain about my beliefs that the far-right Israeli government had advanced knowledge of the October 7th attacks and allowed them to happen. This might be a bit too much for some of you to fathom, but we now know that the Israelis had credible evidence from their own intelligence services, as well as warnings from other countries, that Hamas were planning an attack. For some reason, the higher-ups within the Israeli government decided to dismiss the evidence and warnings, which included a detailed report of Hamas's plans. And it's this that I found mind-boggling, because as we've come to see over the past year, the Israelis never miss an opportunity to kill a Palestinian, which you'd know if you have any knowledge of the conflict that's been going on there for the past 75 years. But we don't even need to go too far back in the past for evidence of this behavior. We can just see how the war is being conducted in Gaza today, where Israel are bombing UN schools, hospitals, refugee camps, and evacuation zones. In past conflicts between Israel and Hamas, Israel's excuse for these bombings were that Hamas were using these places as human shields and firing rockets from there. Hamas, they said, by using the schools to launch attacks on Israel, had turned them into legitimate military targets. Now, fast forward to today. Israel are still bombing UN schools and refugee camps, but this time they can no longer use the excuse of being attacked from these places because no one is firing rockets from there. Instead, they say they were targeting a Hamas operative that was in the area, and in doing so, killing numerous civilians to get to their target. See how they've changed the goalposts and red lines? It's become blatantly obvious that Israel are willing to kill 100 innocent Palestinian civilians for the sake of taking out one Hamas operative, even though they are at no direct threat from that particular place or area. This makes the fact they call themselves the world's most moral army an absolute joke. Now I want you to try and imagine the weeks and months before the 7th of October, when Israeli intelligence top brass got detailed reports of Hamas's plans to attack Israel. This should have been like a wet dream to them, and I'd imagine the Israeli forces would have had soldiers queuing up to be the ones chosen to take kill shots at the Hamas terrorists. Israel had all the info they needed. They knew where and how Hamas planned to attack. It would have been like shooting fish in a barrel. So why did Israel choose to ignore the intelligence? The answer is because they had something bigger planned, or rather, someone else had something bigger planned. And this is where the U.S. comes in, because it's their policies that are the catalyst for everything that is happening now and will happen in the future. To really understand what is going on in the Middle East right now, we can't look at everything through the microcosm of the Israel-Palestine conflict. We have to see things through the macrocosm of what's happening in the world at this moment, particularly the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and how it's a byproduct of the Russia-China alliance aiming to overthrow the military and economic hegemony of the West. The outcome of the Ukraine conflict is crucial to both the West and Russia and China's plans for the future. And it's well known that Iran are supplying Russia with drone technology to fight against the Ukrainians, which is exactly why the U.S. are planning on going to war with them, as well as the fact that Iran have been a thorn in their side in various other arenas in the region like Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. However, it seems to be Iran helping Russia that has really irked the U.S. But the Americans can't start a preemptive war with Iran just like that, because if that happens, Iran's proxies will immediately start attacking the U.S.'s proxy in the region, Israel, and the devastation could be catastrophic. So Israel are now going about removing threats in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon in preparation for the coming war with Iran. And don't be mistaken, this war is going to happen. It's basically inevitable now. The only thing I'm unsure of is how it actually starts. One thing I'm certain of is that the Americans are doing everything they can to make sure it happens sooner rather than later. The atrocities in Gaza that the U.S. has supported militarily and provided cover for politically are being done in the hope of pushing Iran's axis of resistance to the point where they feel they have to do something significant militarily, which will then give the U.S. the pretext they need to attack Iran. Even the Hezbollah pager attacks that happened just a few days ago in Lebanon, and in no doubt was greenlit by the U.S., was an attempt to try to ramp up the tit-for-tat attacks that have been happening at the Israel-Lebanon border into a full-scale war. But Hezbollah haven't taken the bait yet, despite all the attempts to get them to do so, such as Western media constantly goading them by framing the attacks as humiliating for Hezbollah. I don't remember them saying that about Israel or the IDF regarding the attack by Hamas on October the 7th. Instead, they rightly used words like horrific, gruesome, evil, but are unable to find similar epithets for the pager attacks that took place in Lebanon. In fact, some Western media outlets had contributors describing the pager attacks as wonderful, while other contributors have often failed to contain their glee. It's no coincidence to me that the horrific pager attacks in Lebanon came 2 weeks after news that Iran had supplied Russia with long-range missiles to use in their fight against Ukraine. The Americans know that if they want Russia to fail against Ukraine, then those supplying them with weapons need to be removed from the equation. They won't preemptively attack Iran, mainly because the Democratic administration in the U.S. are so eager not to be perceived by the American public as having started another endless war abroad. They want to come across as the good guys that come to the defense of an ally, no matter what kind of war crimes their ally has carried out. And so Israel are going to keep ratcheting up the conflict with Lebanon, hoping that Hezbollah eventually carries out an act that will give them the pretext to have a full-scale war, which will then inevitably draw in Iran and then the U.S. But as I've already mentioned, this conflict is bigger than the Middle East. It's about a new world order and who controls the future. Will it be the new Russia-China-BRICS partnership that's resource-rich and is offering investment and development to many countries in the global south? Or will it be the old guard of the West that's poor in resources, but rich in exploitation and military might? Who knows? But what I can tell you is don't be surprised if this Middle East conflict draws in other superpowers like Russia and China who will enter to defend Iran from U.S. and Israel aggression. What do you think? Thanks for watching. Help support this channel by hitting the like and subscribe buttons below. Till next time.